Good evening and welcome to a new episode of our program Cairo Local Time here on Nile International. I'm Yasmin Bakir, and today we're going to be shedding light on our second part of our program on the newly launched national projects and how to develop the Egyptian countryside in terms of President Sisi's announcement to allocate 500 billion Egyptian pounds to develop 4,500 villages across the country for the next 3 years. We'll be joined in with a guest in the studio later on to discuss further on the impact of this project on the villages and to the Egyptian economy as a whole. But at first, let's take a look at the top stories and what's heading the Egyptian news during the past 24 hours. And we start with President Sisi, who inspects the construction work in the new administrative capital city on Monday to see the progress in the construction work in a number of neighborhoods and establishments at the new administrative capital. And as I've said at the beginning, we are going to take a look at this upcoming report where President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi had paid a visit to the construction work to follow up on the establishments and the neighborhoods that are taking place at the new capital city.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has ordered strict adherence to the time frame set for construction in the new administrative capital during a tour of the mega city's main neighborhoods and buildings. According to a statement by the presidency, al-Sisi was briefed on the construction of Egypt's Islamic Cultural Center, which will be home to one of the world's largest mosques, Misr Mosque. The mosque, which has a 140-meter-high minaret, can accommodate up to 107,000 worshippers and includes several spacious halls for celebrations, events, and Quranic schools. El-Sisi also inspected the new capital's House of Representatives headquarters, which is slated to be the largest in the Middle East, with its main hall accommodating up to 1,000 members. Attached to the headquarters are several service buildings, which include a house of worship, a medical center, a police center, a media center, and others. He also inspected the new capital's government district, which will be home to the cabinet's headquarters, ministers, and other government bodies. El-Sisi also toured the People's Square, which has the highest flagpole in the world. In 2015, Egypt started construction on the new administrative capital 45 kilometers east of Cairo as part of the government's plan to reduce pressure on an overpopulated 20 million strong capital, expand urban areas, and develop the infrastructure of the 104 million nation. The new administrative capital, which is being built over 714 square kilometers by tens of thousands of workers, will be home to the government housing district, 29 ministries, and other state institutions, including the cabinet and parliament buildings and 20 residential neighborhoods that can accommodate 6.5 million people.
Home for All Egyptians initiative aims at building 500 different residential units, and according to Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli, who held a meeting to follow up the implementation of the presidential initiative Home for All Egyptians, aims at building 500,000 residential units across Egypt. Now, the initiative is part of a project for developing the capitals of the governorates and the large cities. The government is working on bringing an end to the unlicensed constructions by identifying state-owned empty land plots that can be allocated for the housing projects. Now, some of those lands can be in the acquisition of the public, enterprise, and endowment ministries. Egypt's targeting 50 million beneficiaries under a Decent Life initiative, according to Minister of Planning and Economic Development, Minister of Planning Dr. Hala Said, who had reviewed the ministry's plan to implement government's Egypt's kick-off program as she addressed the parliament on Monday.
Planning and Economic Development Mr. Hala Said told the House of Representatives that Egypt is looking to ensure that 50 million citizens in all underdeveloped villages nationwide will benefit from its Decent Life initiative at an estimated cost of 500 Egyptian billion pounds in the upcoming 3 years. The minister was reviewing the implementation of the government's Egypt Kicks Off program. She said that allocations for the first phase of the presidential initiative was set at 20 billion Egyptian pounds for 375 villages. She said that the first phase covered approximately 4.5 million citizens, and the initiative launched by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi in early 2019 aims to provide better living conditions for the neediest rural villages in Egypt. The president has said that the second stage of the initiative, launched in December, targets a total of 1,500 villages inhabited by 18 million citizens. El-Said said that a plan of action is being developed for the first time in Egypt's history of economic reform to transform the Egyptian economy into a productive, knowledge-based economy with competitive capabilities in the global economy. El-Said also shed light on the structural reform program for the Egyptian economy, a plan of action being developed to implement structural reforms to encourage inclusive growth and create decent job opportunities. 3 productive sectors have been identified as a major priority for the structural reform program, namely the agriculture sector, the industrial sector, and the communications and information technology sector. The minister explained that these sectors are capable of creating job opportunities and providing sustainable foreign exchange. She added that the government, in cooperation with the Ministry of Finance, will begin issuing green bonds to help finance green initiatives and investment projects. This will double the percentage of green public investments from 15% in the current fiscal year to 30% in fiscal year 2021-2022, eventually reaching 50% by the end of fiscal year 24-2025. Additionally, she stressed the importance of Egypt's family planning program and how the imbalance between the rate of population growth and the size of resources can hurt prospects from development, effectively reducing per capita spending on education, health, housing, and transportation.
Egypt's recovery rate for COVID-19 hit 78%, according to the Health of Ministry, who announced the recovery rate from the coronavirus pandemic at the isolation hospital, hitting 78% after a total number of recovered cases have reached over 132,000. Now, Egypt ranks the 49th among the world countries in terms of their recovery rates. And earlier officials said the elderly and people with underlying health conditions and chronic diseases will be able to register for the coronavirus vaccines this week. The registration will open on a secure website as soon as the vaccination of medical teams in all hospitals is being completed. New archaeological discoveries being found in the city of Alexandria, and a joint Egyptian-Dominican mission has announced the discovery of 16 burials in rock-cut tombs or burial shafts at the Temple of Magna, west of Alexandria in Egypt. Now, the type of cut-out tombs discovered were popular in Egypt's Greco-Roman era, where a number of mummies were discovered in the shafts, although that they are reportedly in a poor state of preservation. Now, the mummies features the characteristics of mummification in the Greco-Roman era. Gold foil in the form of a tongue were placed in the mouth of the mummy in a special ritual to ensure their ability to speak before the Osirian court in the afterlife. And a little bit of sport news, and the Mayar Sharif becomes the first Egyptian player to win a match in the Grand Slam tournament. Now, Egyptian Mayar Sharif had achieved an achievement for the first time in the history of Egypt by winning a match in the Grand Slam tournament. She won over the French world number 187th, Chloe Paquette, to continue achieving all records in Egypt's history under her name. Maya won 2-0 in the first half, ended with a 7-5 lead, only to return in the second half and win the same score. Now, she's ranked as number 128th in the world, and that's the best classification for an Egyptian tennis player. And we still have more coming up here on our program. Cairo Local Time. Stay tuned. We'll be back right after this break.
The Rose Project is always a successful project. Demand for gifts increases in the weddings and Valentine seasons. Roses are a favorite subject in art and appear in portraits, illustrations, on stamps, as ornaments or as an architectural elements. The long cultural history of the rose has led to its being used often as a symbol. Why are red roses considered romantic? Are you wondering why the flowers of roses are considered as the most enduring symbol of love and romance? Red roses are the most romantic flowers of all. In fact, even Shakespeare used this romantic flower to complete his classical Romeo and Juliet. Many notable and popular poets and writers also used the romantic significance of red roses in their writings. After all these years, the same red roses are viewed and associated with love. Learn these facts according to the florist behind the reasons why red roses are classified and symbolized for romance and love.
حلمي وبدأت قالوا عني زمان موهوم بيضيع وقت لا يوم سلمت ولا استسلمت ووقعت وقمت وامبارح غير دلوقت هنا قلبي من جوا ده اللي بيديني القوة في طريقي مشيت واديني ثبت
لن ننجح إلا بكم.
من هنا قررت بعد ما فكرت امشي عالصعب وعرفت انا لما كبرت ان اللي تفكر في ازمه كان خوفك منه ملوش لازمه واديك عالصعب قدرت واللي زمان ضحكوا عليك شوفهم دلوقتي بيداروك صفوف وراهنوا عليك تخسروا كسبت. انا ابن مصر انا ضد الكسر انا رافع راسي تملي لفوق طول العمر انا ابن مصر قلبي نسر ما اقدرش اعيش ابدا يوم غير وانا حر. شفت يا زمان ومواقف ملهاش عد بس الصدمات بتقوي ومش بتهد. شفت يا زمان ومواقف ملهاش عد بس الصدمات بتقوي ومش بتهد. انا عندي ثقة بالنفس ومناعة ضد اليأس. انا ابن مصر انا ضد الكسر انا رافع راسي تملي لفوق طول العمر انا ابن مصر انا ابن مصر قلبي نسر ما اقدرش اعيش ابدا يوم غير وانا حر. انا ابن مصر انا ابن مصر انا ضد الكسر انا ضد الكسر انا رافع راسي تملي لفوق طول العمر انا ابن مصر قلبي نسر ما اقدرش اعيش ابدا يوم غير وانا حر.
Welcome back again. You're still watching us here on Cairo Local Time, and as I've mentioned earlier, we're going to be talking about the development projects that will be taking place in 4,500 villages here in Egypt for the next upcoming 3 years as part of the development of the rural and urban areas here in Egypt. And how is that going to change the face of these villages and the life of the people living in the villages, and in addition, of course, how will that, or in return, affect the entire economy here in Egypt? And to shed further light on this, I'm very much delighted to have joining me here in the studio this afternoon, engineer Samir Riad, economic expert. Thank you very much for coming in, engineer Samir. Now, before we kick off with our topic, let's take a look at this report and the project that has been launched by the directives of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi.
President Al-Fattah al-Sisi has revealed that Egypt has allocated about 500 billion Egyptian pounds to develop 4,500 villages across the country. The president said that the government has been able to provide all the financial support needed to develop these villages. The development of Egypt's villages, however, faces a significant challenge in the huge size of the development projects required, as each village differs from the other. This means that the government has to provide different designs for each village separately. President al-Sisi also confirmed that there is a mandate to construct 500,000 housing units in various governorates, especially those governorates without desert backing. The national plan for developing the countryside comes as part of the state's sustainable development efforts targeting rural areas. It aims to raise the capabilities of the infrastructure in these villages, covering all services and living and social aspects. This will in turn effect the positive change in the reality of life for those living in Egypt's villages and ensure that the change occurs in a comprehensive manner. Developing the villages aims to upgrade the efficiency of their services in integration with Egypt's National Decent Life Initiative, which targets the development of rural communities. Recently, the Decent Life Foundation welcomed volunteers of all ages and experiences to participate in the presidential initiative's various activities, which target the development of 1,500 villages in 20 governorates nationwide. The Decent Life Initiative targets the most vulnerable groups, providing them with essential services including infrastructure development, decent housing, social development, health services, educational services, and economic empowerment.
Welcome back again. We're still joined in with our guest, engineer Samir Riad, economic expert. Thank you once again for coming in, sir. And let's take a look let's start by taking a look at the report and the project itself. And what does this indicate? I know it's a project that aims at 4,500 villages for 3 years. The first phase is around 1,500 at a cost of 500 billion Egyptian pounds. What does that indicate from an economic perspective?
This is a very positive move. And we believe that we left this issue since a very long time, and the villages has been increased in their population in the last 50 or 100 years, and definitely we can introduce some industries to those villages, which is which is a friendly industry for the the environment, and this kind of things will help the populated areas and the villages, to have the jobs next to their houses, not far away. And this should be taken into consideration, and I believe the government is taking this into consideration, because once upon a time, the village, say from 40 years or 30 years ago, the number of people in these villages was definitely maybe half of the population of today. This means, and the agriculture, which is that is the only thing which the people are occupied with. Today there is mechanical equipment and things like this. That means that the number of people which they are involved in the agriculture has been decreased, and the population has been increased. That it means to stop as well the immigration from the village to the cities. This is one of the good reasons that if we can get the jobs inside the village, the people will not immigrate to the cities. All of these things is a positive thing for the economy and positive things for the different things. That it means I ask if we can do the agriculture and the cultivation, and besides this some friendly industries which can be introduced to the villages, like the small industries and medium-sized industries, and there is a lot of things which can be done. Can be added, and definitely in the non-cultivated area. The area, we have to keep the areas which is for the agriculture. We have to not to touch it.
Not just as the population has increased throughout the years, as you've correctly said, sir, but also let's talk about the capabilities, the technological capabilities that are very different now. You've said that there's new techniques and equipments that are used for cultivation and agriculture materials, and the generations have also changed. I mean, the youth that are now growing, or the generation that came after this very long period, have very different mentalities, and maybe that's one of the reasons why they're shifting or migrating to cities, is because they are aiming and looking for a better living conditions. But with this happening, how are they going to adopt and adapt to the new boundaries or the new safe zone by going back again to the villages?
We have to look at the village as a small part of a city. We cannot neglect that there is a lot of things which is missing from the villages. That's why we have to introduce those things as much as possible to enable the people to stay in the village and to have a smooth life and to have an easy life and to have their means as well around them, not far away from them. This kind of things will help people to enjoy life and to stay in their villages.
But yes, now the project that the President has called on in this initiative is a 3-year period for a target of 4,500 villages. Now, we're not going to talk about the period in terms of how long it is, because it's definitely not. We do know that President Assisi is always keen on working very hard and fast along with his government to be more productive and developed in a very short time.
Right.
But this period or duration of 3 years, does it have any specific economic indication from your perspective?
You know, our president, you know, teach us that time is valuable, and he is working on time all the time. That it means that we have to go ahead and to work hard on a strategy which has to be 1, 2, 3, 4 in a certain time. And this is, I appreciate it very much, because if we are as nation consider time as an important issue, this will help us to develop ourselves in a quick way and in a better, you know, timing. That is why time is precious.
Definitely, sure. And let's also talk about the costs. 500 billion Egyptian pounds seems to be a striking number. Now, these villages do not have an exact estimate number of populated percentages, as they are different in terms of population and in terms of demands and what's required. But as a total number, do you think that this number is going to be indicated to be able to be divided into a certain priority list? And what do you think this priority list is from your perspective?
Looking at it as it is an investment. It is not a wasted money. It is an investment which has got a return in every sense of the word. You know, the return will definitely come, and will multiply this 500 millions into, you know, big numbers. And it is, we have to look at it as an investment. We shouldn't look at it as only development money. You know, it is an investment.
Now, you mentioned something a couple of moments ago, and this is part of the new world order, pardon me, in terms of the economic cycle and shift that the whole world is going through, and that is focusing on the micro, small, medium enterprises.
Right.
And that is a good chance to be able to work on that, as it will be somehow related to a positive indicator to this development process on an economic perspective here, speaking on Egypt's economy as a whole. So giving this chance to these individuals to go for micro and medium enterprises, what does that going to reflect?
We are giving these people as well chance to discover themselves, and the society will discover what is the potential of these people. This number, I don't know exactly how many people are in those villages, but let us assume, you know, there are certain number of the Egyptian population, and these people cannot be isolated from the society. It has to be in the society, and this way, what is the president doing is getting them involved in the society in every sense of the word. Maybe we can get out of them, you know, talented people in certain areas and so on, you know. And this is, that's why I said it is a big investment, and it is an important investment, and it will have definitely a return on the society.
Speaking of society, and this is a good chance for me to ask you from a cultural perspective, the culture of people in villages is very much different than cities, and this happens anywhere around the world. Now, with keeping up with the modern world and the new face of Egypt and the development in terms of technology, and with these developments in terms of these kind of projects, how is that going to be able to shape the culture of people living in villages?
Of course, this definitely, when these people are improving their way of living, you know, then they will be aware of a lot of things which they are not enjoying it, you know, newspaper, books, education, industry, you know, this will you know, improve their way of living, you know, and they will have a return on the societies in return of, you know, definitely there is.
I mean, what are the main needs of the Egyptian people living in the countryside at the moment, from your perspective? I know that as part of you working very much closely with business, that you get to work so much with the labor force, and most of these labor force, if you really speak to them on a personal level, you would find them immigrating from countrysides and from villages to shift into something different. So you basically would give me just a couple of needs that these people are calling for.
The society needs a lot of lot of improvement and lot of changes in their attitude and their, way of, everybody wants to go to the university to get a job. So everybody wants to be a doctor, engineer, and so on, but nobody wants to be a mechanic. Nobody wants to be technical side.
Schools, yes.
And all of this, because once upon a time Egypt was agriculture nation, and now we have to introduce the industry to our society because we are 100 million people. Once upon a time when we were 10 million and 15 million and 20 million, it can be contained, that is the people in the agriculture involved, and the economy can.
And even back then, a large millions of people, a large percentage of the Egyptian population were very much into the agriculture because it meant to them land and it meant to them ownership and so forth. If you'd allow us and excuse us to go over the phone, we also have another perspective and another debatable opinion and analysis concerning this issue. I'm joined over the phone by economic expert Mr. Ghaffar. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
If I'm correct, these development projects in the villages is going to be serving at least 60 million Egyptian people. That is how important these developments are at this stage. If I'm going to ask you to how you see this in terms of analysis and evaluation to the importance and the significance of the timing of this project and the planning of this project in terms of the phases and the duration of when it's going to be ending, as well as the budget or the costs that are allocated for it.
First of all, after we've been through the economic reforms and all the infrastructure projects that have been implemented over the last years, it was about time to look at the Egyptian citizen, Egyptian individual. Try and sort of higher up his standard of living, his lifestyle. By giving importance to all what matters to him. So, talking education, we're talking health, we are talking housing, etc. So this is a very important direction that had to be followed in order to make all the Egyptians feel that the outcome of all the reforms, etc., was directed to their well-being, to a better life for them. Then came the project for the development of villages. As we all know, a lot of people left the villages, left, I should say, rural areas to go into urban areas looking for a better life. Looking for jobs, etc. So if the government brings the jobs to them in their own habitat, then they should not be moving. And in the same time, it will, in general outlook, improve the environment of the different rural areas. And this is exactly what this project is directed to.
Yes.
First of all, to create jobs for them where they live through initiatives, financing, micro investments, micro loans, medium and small enterprises where they are. Try and build respectable and reasonable housing for them, creating a better community in the rural areas so that people will stay and will develop their own villages and own...
Yes, very well. Mr. Ghaffar, our economic expert, thank you very much for joining us on Cairo Local Time. For this update. We have a chance for one more question here before we end our episode, Engineer Riad. In 3 years' time, how do you see, with all the developments and the other projects that are being parallelly working on and going all the way from developing villages to the new administrative capital, where is Egypt going to be in 3 years' time?
Well, I believe, 3 years that it means we will start and it will carry on from now till the 3 years finished, and we will not stop. Because now we are putting things on the road now, to improve the whole thing and to have different, job and different vision, and our look and then our strategy on the villages. That's why they are getting themselves involved in the country, in the whole of the strategy of the nation, economically and in every sense of the word. We are going to get involved. This big part of our brothers and sisters, we get them involved in the society, because I believe up till now they are not involved to that extent. That means this development, getting them involved in the society. We are adding now, power to our economy and to our people, and and definitely if we are 100 million people, we have to realize this 100 people in their output, in their way of living, in their in a lot of things. That's why we are getting, it's not a matter of developing this villages. We are getting them involved in the society more and more,
and getting out the best potentials,
of course, and
they have for them, so that they can have a better
and this is a fantastic move. Is a great thing that we are,
Thank you very much for
thank
coming
you very
in.
much.
Engineer Samir Riad, economic expert, thank you very much for coming in. Hello, local time. Our time is unfortunately up for now, so thank you for watching. The top stories will be coming your way. Please stay tuned.